Hey folks, hope you're doing well. Wanted to make this video to kind of review this new fight stick that I got. It's a PunkWorkshop FS24. I realized there wasn't a lot of English language content on this stick on the internet or resources available when I was trying to do my own research to decide if I wanted to purchase it. So figured it would be a good time to kind of upload this video. So I was looking for a couple things with the new stick. I knew that I wanted a fight stick. Like, that's what I know. That's what I enjoy. And a couple things was that I really wanted the extra buttons for L3 and R3. Pretty common these days to have this, especially on leverless controllers, and with the kind of state of modern fighting games where you kind of need more macros in order to compete, whether it's drive, parry, or maybe S1 and S2 into XKO or whatever. Typically, you need, to rely on more macros. And so, that was one of my requirements for a stick. Another requirement was that I wanted the case to be, quick detach. So, like, you can see that this stick is held together by magnets, so you can open and close it very well. I'll go into that more a little bit later, but that was also a requirement. Another requirement that I had was that it was natively PS5 compatible, or at least had a brick board inside, which this controller does. That's great. And then a nice to have, which, to be honest, like was part what sealed the deal for me, was that this controller comes with a detachable joystick. You can see here that the joystick is not attached right now, but it's because it's being stored in here, right? There is a clip for it. Take it out. The case is, again, held together by magnets. You can see I have the ball top and the shaft here. And all you have to do is kind of push this up, put it down, let go. There we go. It's there. It's attached to the stick. You can't really detach it by pulling upwards. So that's really nice. And so all those features together, plus a bonus was being able to customize your own art. So this controller, I got the clear version. And the nice thing about this is actually, I'm going to take off this joystick here, put it right there. You can place the artwork. So all you have to do is kind of take off these screws that hold magnets, and then you can order artwork or make your own from Focus Attack and then replace it. So, it's kind of like a lot of modern sticks. What they do is they have like a piece of plexi over this. So you would kind of unscrew things from the top, remove it, and then put in a new piece of artwork after you remove the stick and the buttons. And that's how it goes. But this is actually, I think, a little bit nicer because it comes in from the back, right? I kind of showed on the opposite end. You put the artwork in this way. And as a result, one of the issues with plexi is that it doesn't always sit flush on your stick, right? So the problem is that kind of you see it sticks up, it's held together by a couple screws, and really actually doesn't look that good. Like there's a lip, it's not really sealed, right? So actually if you, God forbid, spill something, or even if you're playing and then there's some sweat, that comes down off your hands, it can actually get underneath the plexi and then cause some damage. So this is kind of a nice design for that. Put the stick back on. So a couple additional pieces of info for this stick. I ordered this from the PunkWorkshop US website, so no need to pay tariffs or import taxes. That's kind of nice. This was $300 MSRP with $15 shipping plus tax. It came out to about $330, $340. Kind of expensive, right? So let me just talk about some of the other features of this stick before, kind of get my final verdict. So these buttons are PunkWorkshop Blaze, I think. That's what's on the website, at least. To be honest, I've never used the PunkWorkshop buttons. I can't tell the difference between V1, V2, or PunkWorkshop Blaze. So to be honest, these are silent buttons. They feel, I would say, one of the main problems I've had with silent buttons is that they don't really give a lot of tactile feedback when you press them. And so when you're used to a typical arcade button, where they kind of feel like tap 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 tap, right? Like they have that sound effect. These don't give you that sound effect, and the actual the amount that you depress the button feels less than a typical Sanwa OBSF or what have you. But, you know, I feel like they do actually give a pretty decent amount of tactile feedback, and it's actually quite reasonable. Apologies, I have my cat here. So proprietary buttons, they go in the normal way. There's two like quick disconnect terminals, right? Oh, sorry, I'm trying to open this thing. There's two quick disconnect like terminals, one for ground, I believe, and the other for the button. So that's all wired in the normal way, very easy. So nothing wrong there. But you know, that's kind of how these buttons are set up. So very standard. They feel fine. One thing that I liked about this controller, and part of the reason why I wanted to buy it, was that it was 24 buttons, 24 millimeter. I'm used to 30, but it was very easy to kind of adapt this layout, and actually it's more form-fitting to my fingers as opposed to, you know, a 30 millimeter where I had to stretch a little bit. And that additional bit of comfort helps. Plus the matte finish on these buttons over kind of the more plasticky, smooth finish on the Sanwas are kind of nice too. So actually, I thought that I would hate these, to be honest with you. Like I was planning on putting in 24 millimeter like Sanwa buttons, but these are passable. And actually, one of the nice things about this stick, I'm gonna put this stick back in, is that the side buttons. Sorry, it's hard to see because my camera set up, but you know, there are recessed side buttons here. These actually are unused, which is kind of weird, but you have 4 buttons on the left and 4 buttons on the right. So the 4 buttons on the right correspond to your typical share, select, start, options, whatever. And on the left, they're just unused. You get 4 buttons free that are spares, basically, in case these break. So that's pretty cool. What else can I say about this? I adapted to it very easily. You know, honestly, after like one session, it was like, didn't even feel very different. And the ability to reach L3 and R3 with my thumb, like this, if I move my thumb from here to normal position down here, pretty fast. It's not bad at all. I like that. The stick, on the other hand, is, you know, a bit hit or miss. This is a PunkWorkShop proprietary stick. And to be honest with you, I have several problems with it. The first is it's kind of, there's a little bit of give, right? But the dead zone's actually, you know, like look at this. The dead zone's actually not very large. So you can see that I'm activating the switch with not a lot of force. That might be able to be, you know, remedied by a tighter spring or a stronger spring. That's completely fine, but there's a lot of play. It reminds me of like a Hori Hayabusa. It feels a little cheap. It's supposed to be a JLF clone, or, you know, that's what I hear on the internet. But the dead zone is not very large, but there's a lot of give. And also the throw, you know, I play wine glass style, right? So I play like this. Apologies for the shaking. But, you know, a problem that I find with the stick is that the throw is actually a little bit further than a typical JLF, or my personal favorite is an LS32, a Seimitsu LS32. The throw is larger, it's harder to find the corner. You know, I'm a certified mouth-breathing gate rider, right? So that's kind of like how I play on these controllers. So it's not my preference. So I don't like the stick. It's playable. I use it just fine. I kept it stock. It's not a big deal, but it's not my personal preference. The problem with this, though, is, you know, I'm talking about the modability, right? If you'll notice, this stick, it's actually mounted to the bottom of the case, not the top. So typically, a stick is mounted here. As a result of that, you can take or make use of existing, you know, like things that people sell, like mounting plates, in order to, you know, swap out the stick and make it compatible with a lot of different types of sticks. For example, LS32, Seimitsu, Sanwa, even stuff like Korean levers. You know, this is kind of a pretty common design, and so there's a lot of options when you mount your joystick to the top. But when you mount it to the bottom, there's these kind of feet. I'm not really able to show you very well. Maybe I can actually. Let me just raise this up a little bit. There's these feet here. These are all, like, you know, plastic, 3D printed, whatever. These are special, right? I think that you can swap in a JLF and it'll fit these specific mounting points. But this plastic piece, it's not going to work for the same Meizu LS32. At least that's what I've read on the internet. You know, I haven't tried this myself just because, you know, I figured if people are saying it's not going to work, you know, I'm not going to buy one just to try. But that's a problem. So proprietary mounting system is going to mean that there's going to be some DIY in being able to get compatible levers in here. And that's a problem when the PunkWorkshop lever isn't great. I mean, they sell this for 30 bucks on the internet and, you know, on their website. And I wouldn't pay 30 bucks for this. Like, to be honest with you, it's inferior to a JLF, in my personal opinion, based off of my preferences. You might feel differently, but, you know, I can't recommend the stick. And thankfully, as I said, it's possible to replace this with a JLF. I think just based off of the mounting system, you know, that it's designed in a similar way because this is a clone, essentially. I also keep the cable in here. You know, that's USB-C, so that's not really a big issue. I'll show you the port. The case is held together by strong magnets. Really nice. Here's the port. You know, it's just pretty standard. Okay, what else can I say about this thing? I bought the Brook version, so it's compatible with PS5. You know, it's kind of nice, right? Like, there is a breakout board with screw terminals. This is something I look at, and I know that I can mod if I really needed to, because it's very simple, right? If it was a more custom PCB with a certain pinout, maybe that would require some more specialized understanding of electronics that I don't have. But I can definitely work with something like this. Actually, I put together a similar, you know, DIY stick using a breakout board with an Raspberry Pi. You know, instead you have a Brook board and a breakout board. So honestly, very easy for modability. That's really nice. Although, you know, if I'm being honest, like, I'm not sure if I would have expected this. I would have expected from a company that's selling their sticks, I would have expected a more custom PCB. So it's a you know, good and bad, because a custom PCB, maybe you get nicer ribbon cables. I mean, this is pretty solid, so maybe the issue is mitigated, but you know, these wires come out of here. One thing that I will say, when I got this controller shipped, is that this ball, you know, this shaft and ball top, it's supposed to be here. It was actually knocked out and rolling around in transport the entire time. I don't know what it's nicked, you know, everything seemed to be fine, but I can imagine a scenario where, you know, you're in the delivery truck, it's bouncing around and it hits the board, you know, the PCB, and something goes out, or some of these get disconnected, and that could be a pain. So, to be honest, it's baffling that they would ship this ball top in this configuration inside of the stick. It should be separate. There should be no ability to have some, like a failure point like this. I don't know what they're thinking. Anyway. Final thoughts. I have to say also, I bought this stick off the PunkWorkshop US website. It took 3 weeks before they updated the shipping. So I was waiting 3 weeks, not sure if this thing was in stock, if this thing was going to ship at a reasonable time frame. On their website, they say, hey, 1 to 2 weeks shipping, you know, straight to your door. But the reality is, it's not like that. It took me 3 weeks before I got a shipping notification. And the funny thing is that they actually shipped it from 30 minutes from my house. Basically, you know, I live in Southern California. They're receiving, you know, their business location they shipped it from is in Southern California, less than 30 miles away from where I live. So, you know, that doesn't really matter so much, but it just goes to show, like, their customer service is pretty bad. I had to contact them on Twitter in order for them to respond to me. And they didn't even respond from the US account. They responded from the Chinese account. You try to message them on the US contact form, nah, that's not going anywhere. They're not going to respond. You try contacting them from the US Twitter account, they're not going to respond. But I contacted them from the Chinese Twitter account. The next day, I got a shipping notification. If I hadn't done that, I really don't know how long I would have waited for this stick. But it is a consideration. That plus the ball top and the shaft rolling around inside of this thing the entire time it was shipped from 30 minutes away from my house to here. Yeah, I would say their customer service is very bad. Not really what I would expect from a company that's competing with the likes of Farmilo and you know, Hori and etc. So very bizarre, but you know, it's kind of nice. So one thing that I will also say is that it comes with a case, and I'll get that in just 1 second. So I think part of the added value with the stick is that it actually came with this soft case, you know? There's like the branding, so you can put this stick inside the case and take it around to locals. That's pretty nice. I did not even know. Okay, this speaks to the fact that their website is like not very descriptive and kind of ambiguous, right? I didn't even know that my package came with this case. Like I said, 300 bucks. But it came with the case. Pretty cool. And extra buttons. Can't complain about that. Final thoughts. I will say, if I wanted to DIY a controller like this, it would probably come out to the same price. The enclosure probably costs around 150 bucks. Brook board, over $50, right? The stick plus the detachable stick module, let's say another $60, right? The detachable shaft for a JLF is about $30. It's called the EX Groove Link. A JLX is about $30, $50 these days. Probably a little bit more, to be honest with you, with the tariffs and stuff. Each button, if you go with the cheapest arcade quality, like decent quality, $4, $3 per button. You know, let's say we have 8, 10, plus the 4 on each side. That's 18. You know, 18 times 4, right? That's pretty decent amount of money too. Okay. All that, I think, makes, plus the case, right? I think you would get to about the same price, if not a little bit more. So I can't say that this is a bad value. However, let's look at Varmilo, right? The Kasai X, the Nikon Daija. The Nikon Daija is 200 bucks. It only has 8 face buttons, but it has a clamshell design. It's openable, right? And it's like 200 bucks. It was actually going for 150 at Evo 2 years ago. Kasai X is a little bit over 200. I think with the Brook board, it's almost closer to 300. You don't get a detachable lever. You know, you get a very similar setup. You don't get the shitty support. You can buy it at Evo. They sell them directly. PunkWorkShop wasn't even at Evo this year. They say that they were maybe at some random, what do they call it, triangle corner, rectangle corner. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, it's ass. So, but all that considered, the Kasai has problems too. Sorry, I'm kind of just ranting here, but the Kasai, you know, the button side of things, completely proprietary. You can't get in the back at all. You can replace the stick. That's it. That's kind of bad. That's kind of shitty. You know, that sucks. Plus, the Kasai has this, like, you know, what is it called? Like, it's a cable that's on this wheel in the background, so it's kind of like a retractable cable, but just sticks out the edge. That's a failure point that is really stupid. Like, I don't know why they added that. So all that to say, the product itself is pretty competitive. I'm going to swap in artwork. I have the openable case with strong magnets. I have the modability. I have the detachable lever. I have PS5 compatibility for $300. You can't get all of these at the moment for less than $300. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe when Nacon and Hori and Kamba wake up and add these 2 face buttons, Kamba doesn't have the ability to open this case with their Obsidian, which is just absurd. I think they're completely brain dead for not having that option. And also, the detachable lever is super nice and really facilitates this. Once those big manufacturers actually, you know, get in that game and offer it for 200 bucks, that will be the better value. However, at this point, you know, the Kasai or the PunkWorkShop, you know, that's probably where you're gonna, like, the best value you're gonna get. For 300 bucks, you're gonna get all of these options. No other controller is gonna give you that. There is also the DRM FTG, I think it's called, coming from Japan. It's actually pretty popular. It has, you know, like an extra, like a jump switch with the ability to disable the up on the joystick and map it to a button. That's cool, but it's not PS5 compatible, and it costs more than this. So the value is kind of questionable, right? You get a slightly better enclosure that's openable too, but no PS5 compatibility, no detachable joystick. But it has a jump switch, and there's the ability to add your custom artwork. I think is there, but the Plexi is kind of runs into the same problems that I was talking about earlier. So that's not really a reasonable option either, or it's reasonable, but it's not the perfect option. All that to say, I think this controller is really solid. Might sound like I've been complaining a lot about it, but you know, it's going to be a daily driver from here. You know, these buttons are nice-ish. The stick sucks, I'm going to replace that. The enclosure is solid. Actually, one thing I don't like about this is that it's like not on a clamshell, right? So yeah, if I want to open this, I just put this top half somewhere. You know, imagine opening this up, trying to get this ball top while you're at a local, right? You're like, all right, time to play my tournament match. I'm going to grab this, you know, and I'm going to leave this. If you have really long thighs, maybe you can put this top half on your thigh as well while balancing this like near your crotch area. But honestly, that's kind of like annoying. So that's something I've noticed too. If it was on a clamshell, it would like be held here, you know, and then you could do whatever with both hands. You could mess around, get your cord ready, right? Get your ball top, but instead you kind of have to deal with this free floating top half, which is kind of annoying. But the magnetics is nice. The magnetic attachment is nice, so I can't fault it too much. Anyway, that's it basically. You know, take it for what it's worth. Yeah, peace.